And we are live. Welcome to Olivia's Stories, ladies and gentlemen.
My name is Ava and I am 31 years old. I have been married to Brian for the past 6 years. Brian used to work for my father's legal firm. He was a junior intern and slowly worked his way up to become a junior partner in the firm. I met him at one of my father's office parties, and although I did not like him immediately, we slowly grew close and eventually got married when both my parents met with a car accident and died. I was 25 years old then. I have a kid sister, Mia, who is 15 years younger to me. She was an unplanned child and my parents decided to keep the baby. I am very grateful to my parents for this decision as Mia was the best thing that ever happened to me. She means everything to me and I have taken care of her right from the day she was born. I have always thought of her more as my baby than my sister and I love her a lot. We were once a happy family until the news of my parents' accident reached us. I rushed to the hospital with Mia, who was still half asleep. After a few hours, they were declared dead and our entire world shattered around us. Brian came to the hospital and took over the paperwork and everything there was to. He would stay with us at home and make sure that we were fed and helped us to move on with our lives. It was a very difficult phase for us, especially since Mia was only 12 then. It was hard for her to accept the fact that she would have to grow up alone without our parents around. After a few weeks, I started going to the office to manage the firm, but I never showed any interest in it. It was Dad who took care of everything and I had no idea how things worked. Brian helped me in dealing with things at work, but it was all too complicated for me. I missed Dad a lot and could not focus on work. I requested Brian to take care of everything as I couldn't leave me alone for too long. Brian understood my situation and assured me that he would handle everything at the office. He recognized the importance of family and was willing to support me during this difficult time. With his help, I felt a sense of relief knowing that I could rely on him while I focused on being there for Mia. Brian had taken over my dad's firm and organized it very well after all the initial chaos after his death. I was grateful to him for it. I had seen a different side of him which was more responsible, which really fascinated me. I think this quality of his started attracting me towards him. He not only took over the company successfully but also took very good care of me and Mia as if we were his own family. Mia always looked forward to spending time with him. She asked me one day if Brian could stay with us. It would be the best thing for her as she would get to see him every day. This made me start thinking if there was some way I could make this happen. I knew that marriage was not something I could propose to Brian as it would be absurd to get married to him just for the sake of Mia. I did not even feel romantically interested in him. As the days went by, he would come home often and spend time with Mia. We started spending time like a family and soon I realized that it was not a bad idea to actually get married to Brian. One day, after Mia slept, I spoke to Brian and asked him if he had any romantic interests in his life. He found it quite weird but soon understood what I was getting at. He replied he did not have anyone special in his life. This is how our relationship started. We did not have a very romantic, fairy tale kind of a love story, but we made do with each other. Very soon, we both accepted that this is something which was best for the both of us. Mia was very happy when we broke the news to her of us getting married. It was mostly a marriage of convenience. It was a week since we got married, but I never felt there was any change in mine or Brian's behavior towards each other. The only good thing was that Mia was very happy to spend time with Brian and would always be excited to have breakfast with the both of us. My marriage had always been dull and boring from the beginning. Brian became the lawful owner of my dad's firm and I became a full-time homemaker. My life got so monotonous after getting married that within weeks I felt that it was a mistake marrying Brian. He was very good with Mia, but his equation with me was meh. To sum it up in one word, we would only talk when required and mostly about work and Mia. It felt like we had nothing else to talk about. I started feeling suffocated and wanted to be loved. I wasn't getting that from Brian, that was for sure. I began longing for the passion and affection that seemed to be missing from our relationship. The lack of emotional connection left me questioning if I had made the right decision in marrying Brian. The firm was doing well after a long time, thanks to Brian for his management skills. He hired a personal assistant for himself, which I felt was a bit much, but obviously I did not mention that in front of him. He treated his personal assistant more like a handyman than an assistant. He would make him do all kinds of jobs, which were not even a part of his job. He would make him pick Mia from school, get Brian's coffee or his laundry from the dry cleaners, and sometimes even drop me off somewhere to shop. I felt a little bad for the assistant, thinking he must have been so happy when he got the job, but he would be regretting the job now, as he was doing nothing more than driving everyone around. The personal assistant's job description seemed to have been blurred, as he was constantly being tasked with errands and chauffeur duties. It was evident that his skills were being underutilized, leaving him feeling undervalued in his role. One day Brian's assistant was supposed to drive me to a store. I started a conversation with him. He told me that his name was Alex and this was his first job. No wonder he agreed to anything and everything that Brian would ask him to do. I could clearly see that Brian was taking advantage of Alex needing the job and making him do things that were not even a part of his contract. He was a young and naive guy who was optimistic about everything in life. I felt nice after talking to him. He dropped me off at the store and offered to pick me up once I was done. We continued our conversation, and there was something about him that was very charming that I never wanted this conversation to end. As days went by, I looked forward to my interactions with Alex. He had a positive attitude, and that inspired me to get out of my monotonous life and experience new things. He became friends with Mia as well as Alex would help Mia with her homework and assignments. Their friendship grew stronger as they spent more and more time together, and Alex's willingness to assist Mia with her schoolwork only deepened their bond. Despite the age difference, they found common ground and enjoyed each other's company, making their interactions all the more meaningful. It had been 2 years since Brian had taken over with the company. The office had practically become his second home. Brian would spend most of his time in the office making sure that everything was well organized and things were happening at the pace that he wanted. I could see a shift in his attitude where he had become more and more of a tyrant, making sure that his orders were followed without any questions. Whenever I went to the office, I could sense an air of intimidation around him. I had talked to him about the way he was managing things, and I asked him if he could be a little humble and polite with the people working for us. He gave me a smile and told me that I knew nothing about managing a company, so it would be better if I kept my advice to myself. He was doing a very good job at running the company, and he did all of that without my advice and would probably be doing that going forward even without taking my advice. I felt a little bit of anger and disappointment because first of all, it was never his company, it was my dad's, and maybe I knew nothing about running a company, but I sure knew how to treat people. The way he treated people was not something my dad would be happy with either. Secondly, I was still the chairman with the maximum number of shares, so I could throw him out anytime I wanted. In these 2 years, Alex's job role had shifted from being a brilliant personal assistant to mostly driving me around. Alex would accompany me everywhere I went, and I thought of taking him along with me instead of asking him to wait for me in the car. We spent most of the time together, which led to me thinking, what if I had not been married to Brian, then maybe something could have happened between me and Alex. Every day when I was with Alex, this thought crossed my mind, and one day out of the blue I couldn't stop myself and kissed him. I could see the shock on his face when he realized what I did. I told him that I was sorry for my behavior and it wouldn't happen again. I don't know what I was thinking. It was awkward between me and Alex for some time, but then we forgot about the kiss and continued our conversation. We were in the parking lot of a supermarket one day and were about to leave for home when I slipped and fell down. Alex picked me up and helped me get in the car. He was so close to my face that I couldn't resist myself. I kissed him and he kissed me back. We made out in the back seat of the car. After 10 minutes I realized where we were and what we were doing. I cleared my throat and told Alex that all this was a mistake. He himself felt very sorry for what happened and started driving. There was silence in the car on the way back home. I ran inside and lied down on the bed. I couldn't stop thinking about how effortless it was for me to be so close to Alex. He made me smile, he spoke to me and listened to me. This is what I wanted from Brian, but never understood this. Alex made me feel special and loved. After today, whenever we had a chance, I and Alex would make out, be at the car, my room, even in the bathroom at times. It was thrilling and exciting to sneak out of a party and make out with Alex. Alex was not that good at sex, but was ready to learn and experiment. We would do role plays when we had enough time. I loved this life of mine. Brian would always be engrossed in work, hardly making any time for me, so it was easy to blame him for his absence. However, deep down, I knew that my actions were driven by a desire for attention and affection. Despite the thrill of sneaking around, I couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness in my relationship with Brian. I longed for a connection that went beyond physical intimacy and yearned for someone who would prioritize me emotionally. My encounters with Alex were turning out to be more and more wild and romantic. This was causing me to distance myself from both Brian and Mia. I found myself caught up in the whirlwind of passion and excitement that Alex brought into my life. The intensity of our connection made it difficult for me to focus on anything or anyone else, leaving Brian and Mia feeling like distant memories in comparison. This led to more and more arguments between me and Brian whenever we had any conversation. Brian had recently brought in a new rule in the company which I was not in favor of. I asked Brian the same when he was getting ready for work. We were having an argument about Brian forgetting that this company belonged to my father. He was just a caretaker and Mia and I were the original owners of the company. He just had that power of attorney to run the company but was not exactly the owner of it, so he better behave himself. I was still the chairman and had every right to make decisions on behalf of the company. He told me that he was the one who had been taking care of this company for the past 5 years after my father passed away without any issues and major setbacks. He had every right over the company just the way I did. I told him that he had no rights on the company or over me, and just like he never owned the company, he never owned me as well. He told me that I was his wife and he had every right over me. I told him that he never had rights over me or my body, and I would keep pleasing my body with Alex the way I had been doing all these years. Brian looked at me in disbelief as he was unable to make sense of what he was hearing. I realized what I had said the moment I saw his expression and immediately regretted what I had just blurted out without thinking. Oh God, did I just mention my affair to him without realizing it? There was no taking back what I just mentioned. I tried to think of something quickly that I could say to cover up for my blunder. Brian was smart enough to catch up on my lies. He kept asking me to repeat what I just revealed. I told him that I was just angry and did not mean what I said. He immediately called Alex and asked him to come to our home. When Alex came, he asked me to leave them alone. I don't know what went on between them. I was waiting outside, walking up and down nervously. Alex then walked out after a few minutes and, without even giving me a glance, left looking petrified. It was my time to face Brian. I went in hoping for him to scream at me for my affair with Alex. To my surprise, he hugged me and said that it was not my fault. Alex had other intentions and I was so naive to fall for it. He said he fired Alex and would make sure to be there for me. He also said that he was sorry for not being available in my life and giving only work his priority. I was shocked with his behavior as I had not expected this kind of a reaction from him. I decided to play along with his narrative. I saw a big change in Brian after this incident. He started being extra sweet to me and was spending time with me and Mia just like he used to before we got married. I welcomed this change, and maybe this incident had made him change for the better. I made up my mind not to reach Alex and complicate things when finally everything was falling in place. Brian was investing his time in bonding with Mia. They connected very naturally right from the time he walked into our house when Mia was a kid. I was happy to see Mia laugh and smile a lot. I now started seeing Brian as my husband and a father figure for Mia. I did not need anything more. It had been almost 7 months since Brian found out about my affair with Alex. I must say that things have been pretty good since then. We went on a few vacations as a family. We did things that we used to do when my parents were alive. We were slowly making progress as a family, and I loved that all issues between me and Brian had been resolved. Mia had become so fond of Brian that he would pick her up and spend time with her even after her classes. I was not the only person she had to rely on. That was something that gave me a lot of peace. One day when I came back from my spa session, I saw Mia in her room talking over the phone about being scared and not knowing what to do. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help but intrude to know what was going on. I barged in the room and asked her what was wrong. She said that it was nothing that she wanted to discuss with me. I knew something was seriously wrong because Mia would never ever hide things from me and talk to me this way. I decided not to push her and maybe ask Brian to talk to her when he got home. Till the time Brian got home, I kept imagining scenarios of Mia having trouble with a boyfriend that she probably has. I was not even sure if she had a boyfriend. In the past few months, I had been involved very little in her life that I now realized how distant I had become. Was that the reason she was not letting me in on her problems? I waited for Brian to come and told him that there is something wrong with Mia that I was worried about and wanted him to talk to her about it. He smiled and said that it was not a problem and asked Mia to come to our room. She came in and sat nervously at the edge of the bed. Brian walked up to Mia and told me that he had good news to share. He looked at Mia and held her hand and told me that Mia was pregnant. I fell on the ground. How could she do this, and how is this good news? Before I could respond, Brian told me that Mia was pregnant with his baby and it had already been 4 months. I could not register all of this in my brain. I was blank at the thought of Mia being pregnant. She was just 18, and how could Brian have done this to her? She looked up to him as a father figure, and this was how he treated her? I fumbled for words as nothing made sense. Was this a prank? Were they trying to mess with me? I mean, it couldn't be real. There was no way that Mia was pregnant, and that too with Brian's baby. I was very sure that this was a prank, and I did not want to fall for it. Mia broke down and started crying, telling me that she was sorry. This was a bit too much and could not be a prank. I looked at Brian and he looked serious. He told me that all this is true and they got really close in the past few months. It all happened too quickly for them to realize what had happened, and when they did it was too late. Brian asked Mia to leave us alone so we could talk and find a solution. Mia was still crying when she left and shut the door behind her. After Mia left, Brian looked at me and sat beside me on the floor. He lifted my face and asked me if I was angry. I did not understand what he meant by angry, and that's when he gave me a wicked smile and told me that this is what I would get if I ever tried to cheat on him. This was my punishment for having an affair behind his back and being proud about it. He told me that he kept thinking about what he could do to make me regret having an affair with Alex. He kept pondering over this question, and then he realized that there were only 2 things that mattered to me in my life. So he formulated a plan to make sure he snatches both the 2 things from me. After we had an argument where I had accidentally spilled out about my affair, he realized that there was no point in him getting angry or screaming at me or demanding for a divorce. He knew that all this would only cause him to lose a lot of things. So he cleverly made me think that my affair was not my fault and I was just manipulated into having an affair. He acted all loving and caring to both me and Mia, that we never once doubt his intentions behind the sudden change. All he did was buy time to transfer all the company shares that I and Mia had to him. In the meantime, he started making advances towards Mia in a romantic way and made her feel that he could be more than a friend. Now when I look back, all the vacations that we went on were his way of showing Mia what all he could do to make her happy. Everything he did since he got to know about my affair was to take revenge from me. He made sure that I lost my father's company and also my lovely sister, who I could not live without. I must say that he was both cruel and meticulous in carrying out his plan. Not once did I ever get to know his true intentions behind all this. I was so stupid to believe everything he told me and was willing to give him another chance. I did not have the energy to hear any more, so I broke into tears and fainted. I woke up after some time. There was no sign of Brian, so I decided to go to Mia's room and check on her. Her room was locked. I could hear whispers coming from inside. I knocked on the door, and after a minute Brian opened the door. I ignored him and looked at Mia, whose eyes were swollen from all the crying. I called for her and she hid behind Brian. What did he do to my sister that she was scared of me instead of accusing him of doing this to her? I did not know how he manipulated Mia into believing that he would be there for her. I told Mia that I wanted to talk to her alone, but she denied. She said she would be comfortable if Brian was with her when she spoke to me. I could not believe what I was hearing. She was my sister, why would I need Brian to be there when I talked to her? All this was sounding so ridiculous. Brian looked at me and gave me a wicked smile, and I knew there was something that he had told Mia which was not letting her open up to me. I did not give up and tried again and asked Mia if we both could talk alone as sisters. She looked at Brian, probably asking for his approval, to which he nodded. After Brian left, I made sure I locked the door and asked Mia to sit on the bed. I made her comfortable by telling her that I was her elder sister and I was there for her in this difficult time. I told her I was willing to listen to anything that she has to share, and if there was a problem then she could share it with me. She initially hesitated, so I gave her some time to get comfortable. After about 5 minutes of silence, Mia finally spoke. She told me that she was sorry about stealing my husband. She told me that she did not intend for things to turn out this way, but they did because I was the one responsible for all of this. This was something that I wasn't expecting from Mia. She told me that in the last few months she had been observing how hard Brian was trying to keep me happy. But she always saw me being rude to Brian and not respecting him. I wanted to tell her that all this was not true and I didn't know which world she was living in, but I decided to let her continue. She told me that Brian would arrange all these holidays to get closer to me, but I was always busy with my spas and shopping and I did not give him enough time. She felt sad for him and started spending time with him and got to know what an amazing person he was. On one of the holidays, Mia had jokingly told Brian that she wanted to try alcohol. Brian sneaked some alcohol in her room and asked her to taste it. She wanted me to be there when she drank alcohol for the first time, but I did not pick up her calls. This made her sad, but she did not want to neglect Brian's effort, so she tried it and did not like it. Then they fell on the bed laughing, and that was the first time they kissed. They both laughed about it and started tickling each other. And just like that, Brian got on top of her and started kissing her head. She did not understand what was happening at first, but when she did, she was actually enjoying it and didn't want it to stop. They kissed for a few minutes and started undressing each other, but then Brian stopped and told her this was wrong. Mia was the one who wanted to keep going as she was experiencing all this for the first time, so Brian continued, and that is how it all started. She was crying hysterically as she continued talking. She told me that Brian was her first love and he made her feel so special that she could not lose him. He made her feel loved and valued. He made sure he made enough time from his busy schedule to spend time with her. She told me that she felt bad about cheating on me with my husband, but she also knew that both me and Brian were not happy in our marriage. She said that she felt that she was not doing anything wrong and was actually saving us from a bad marriage. She knew that it was wrong to be pregnant with someone else's baby, but she was so much in love with Brian that she was ready to keep the baby. She said that this was all she had to say and she was sorry for everything that would cause me pain, but she does not regret any of it. Listening to Mia talk, my expression changed 1,000 times from being surprised to disgust to plain disbelief. I could not believe that it was Mia I was talking to. All this was happening behind my back for the past few months, and here I was thinking that he was trying to become a family man. I know that at this point there was no use talking to Mia about Brian being an asshole, as there was no way she was going to believe what I had to tell her. I just told her that it was not her fault and that I was not angry or disappointed with her. She was my little sister and she is going to be that for the rest of her life no matter what. I do not want to burden her with all of Brian's lies and manipulations, as she was already going through a lot, so I let her be and asked her to rest. My head was spinning as I made my way to my bedroom. I saw Brian sitting on a chair waiting for me with a smile pasted on his lips. I could tell from his smile that he knew what went down between me and Mia even without being in that room. I just looked at him with disgust in my eyes for what he had done to my sister. He asked me very politely if Mia was okay. I looked at him and said that he shouldn't be bothered about her. He gave me a bunch of papers and asked me to read through them and get back to him if I had any doubts. I was very sure they were divorce papers and I was ready to sign them. I did not want anything to do with this man and wanted him out of my life as soon as possible. I flipped them open and saw that they belonged to the company. He now owned the highest amount of shares in the company that belonged to my father. How could this be possible? Mia and I together held 85% of the shares, so there was no way that he owned 90% of the shares. I looked at the papers in confusion and told him that if these were fake, then I was going to sue him without hesitation. He smiled at me and said they were real. He then handed me the papers where Mia had transferred all of her shares to Brian. My heart sank as I was not ready to accept it. He not only got my sister pregnant but manipulated her into transferring her shares to him. So now he had both my father's company and my sister at his disposal. He could do anything he wanted with either of them, and there was nothing I could do about it. I felt so helpless in this situation. He took back all the papers from me and grinned at me. He told me that I should have respected him when I had the chance and he wouldn't have been so cruel with me. I looked at him with hatred and went to the bathroom. I sat on the floor and could sense my entire world crashing down on me. I knew that there was nothing I could do to protect my company or my sister. It has been a week since the truth about Mia's pregnancy and we losing all our company shares came to light. The last week has been really difficult as I've been trying to find solutions to get our shares back and also to convince Mia to get an abortion. To be honest, I've made no progress at both these things. I feel lost, defeated, and crushed. I have no hope left. My energy keeps draining as it is very difficult to make an 18-year-old understand that the man she has been dreaming about does not exist. It is all a lie and a smokescreen presented to her to make her hate her sister. Brian has such a strong hold on Mia that she would only talk to me after consulting with Brian. It has been very hard for me to keep my anger under control and dealing with Brian in a nice and sophisticated manner. I am writing this post in the hope that someone out there could advise me on how to convince my sister to get an abortion. I don't want her to live her life with the baby of a person who I knew was going to abandon her soon. I am not bothered about the company or the shares at the moment. All I want is for my sister to be safe. I'm begging anyone out there who could give me a solution to save my sister from such a cruel and cunning person. I would highly appreciate any ideas or solutions to save my sister. Thank you all for your patience and for listening to my story and helping me and my sister out. Update. Thank you for all your replies and support. This has given me strength to fight for myself and my sister. I have tried to rebuild my bond with Mia. I am actively working towards building a relationship of trust with Mia so that I could let her see Brian's true face. I know that it is not going to be easy to reason with Mia to stop looking at me like her enemy and to believe what I have to say about Brian. I have come to the conclusion that there was now no point in forcing Mia to abort her baby as it was too risky. I did not mind her keeping the baby, but getting rid of Brian from our lives was a priority. I tried to use some of your ideas to help me get rid of Brian's hold on Mia. Brian came in one day at breakfast and told me that if I was to file for divorce, he had Alex ready to confess about his affair with me. He even had pictures of us together that would help him prove the affair. He told all of this in front of Mia to show her what kind of a wife I had been to Brian. This was just to gain more sympathy from Mia that I was the villain in this marriage. I was the one who cheated on my husband, and even after that he had been too good to me. I could see his cunning and manipulative skills. He kept telling Mia that I was the one not willing to divorce him, and that was the only reason why he could not be with her. Mia, being too young, would believe anything that he told her and gave me a cold shoulder when I tried talking to her in Brian's presence. Once he was sure that Mia was totally in his control, he slammed the divorce papers on my face. We went to court where he made Mia take the stand and admit that I cheated on him. Obviously, I lost the case and had nowhere to go. The house belonged to Mia, which was being transferred to Brian during my divorce trial. Once he had the house under his name, he kicked Mia out of the house. Both Mia and I were homeless and had nowhere to go. I went and begged Brian to let us stay in our house and we would stay put without causing any trouble. I told him that Mia still had his child and I could not take her anywhere in this condition. This was the least he could do for us. He finally agreed after a lot of pleading. Mia is now 7 months pregnant. We are living in our own house as slaves. I see no light at the end of the tunnel for us. The only thing that keeps me going are the messages and good wishes I get from all of you to hang on and never lose hope. Thank you all for everything you have been doing for me and my sister. I would forever be grateful for your kind words that give us hope to live. I will keep you updated if there is something worth updating. hoping to stay alive and positive till then.